Hi, I'm Steve Schaefer, and today we're going to be working our way through John chapter 3, verses 1 through 36. There are really three stories in this chapter. The first one is about Jesus' encounter with Nicodemus. The second, Jesus launches into a monologue to describe the reason that he's come to earth. And then finally, the closing section is John the Baptist's final testimony about Jesus to his own disciples. As we look at this discourse, as we go through it today, I'm going to do some reading. Chapter 1, you recall, was the message about God presenting an opportunity for all humanity to become children of God through accepting Christ. In chapter 2, that invitation for transformation was focused on Christ, Christ being the fulfillment of all of the promises of the Old Testament, and his proof of being from above was linked to his resurrection by the phrases, my hour and in 3 days. Now in chapter 3, we'll discover that the way we become children of God is by accepting Christ. And that final decision will be ours. So let's read. In chapter 3, verse 1. Now there was a Pharisee, a man named Nicodemus, who was a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs that you are doing if God were not with him. Now notice that Nicodemus is a Pharisee. He's part of the ruling body in Jerusalem. He's one of the most educated people. He would be a teacher of the law, but he comes at night. This is a symbolic link back to chapter 1, where Jesus said, light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not comprehended it, has not overcome it. It was a dual meaning word. And Nicodemus is trying to make sense of Jesus' ministry based on what Nicodemus knows. He's trying to fit Jesus into his own categories. And he says, we know that you are a teacher because A, B, C, and D are true. Notice also that Nicodemus is using the plural. He says, we know. In the story, Nicodemus is a stand-in. He is functioning as a representative of an entire group who thinks the same way. Jesus replied in verse 3, Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God without being born again. How can anyone be born when they are old? Nicodemus asked. Surely they cannot enter a second time into their mother's womb to be born. Here's a classic John's usage of a word that can have two meanings. The word that is translated again is also translated from above. So when Jesus says, Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God without being born again or from above, he means both. It is a second birth, but it is a birth that is from above. Chapter 1 reminded us that we could become children of God, born not of human will and human decision and flesh and blood, but born of God. So Nicodemus, Jesus says again, Very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God without being born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You should not be surprised at my saying you must be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. How can this be? Nicodemus asked. You are Israel's teacher, said Jesus, and you do not understand these things? When Jesus says you must be born of water and the Spirit, this lies in parallel with the next verse which says, flesh begets flesh and spirit begets spirit. So what Jesus is saying is that the first birth, the birth of water, is the birth of flesh. That is our human birth, the birth that is the result of human will, the birth that is the result of sexual desire, the birth that is the result of flesh and blood. That's the first birth. That's the birth that's from humanity. But the birth that we need to consider is the birth that is again, the one that is from above, the one that is of God. And Jesus says that the born from above is a mysterious process. It involves the Spirit. The Spirit, like the wind, again, a double meaning word. Spirit can be translated wind, or it can be translated spirit. And so just as the wind blows and you see its effects, but you don't actually see the wind, you only see it bending the trees or moving the leaves. So it is the birth of the Spirit will be something where you can see its effect, but you can't actually put your hands on it. You can't touch that birth. So Jesus challenges them with a mystery of the real possibility of becoming a child of God that is in conflict with what they claim to know. And so Nicodemus had knowledge, he had a position, he had a rigorous practice as a Pharisee, but he lacked any understanding of what it meant to be born of God. He lacked faith in Jesus. He came in the dark, and he remains in the dark.